Welcome to another buy, hold, sell and skip video. I'm going to talk about 12 players today, some of the most popular transfers in and out. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes and we're very close to 15,000 subscribers. So let's keep on pushing to reach that milestone and let's just get straight into this video. Madison has gone down from his original price at the beginning of the season. He's now 7.9 million and his ownership is 5.8%. And at the time of this recording, he's the third most transferred in, with over 130,000 FPL managers bringing James Madison into their sides, and with good reason. Some fantastic fixtures, and as poor as Leicester have been, Madison has been so consistent, getting the goals and assists, even stretching back to the end of last season. He's got some okay underlying numbers. I think the main things to highlight is the shot volume. 20 shots overall in 6 games is very impressive. 3 goals and 1 assist as well, considering the circumstances surrounding him, and 13 key passes. But the stats that are maybe not as impressive are the XG, the expected assists, the big chances and big chances created. And to be fair, Madison's never been one for great underlying numbers, but he is a good finisher. He's also good with set pieces and he's a really good chance creator. So he's very good in terms of the final third, getting those goals and assists, which is very important in FPL. Nottingham Forest is a fantastic fixture, and even if Leicester concede multiple goals, which to be honest I could see them doing, I think they could also score a number of goals and Madison will be a big part of that. Some great fixtures afterwards as well. I wouldn't go for any of the Leicester defenders or defensive coverage, and to be honest, apart from Harvey Barnes maybe, I wouldn't go for any of the attackers, but James Madison is a big exception and I think he's one of the best options around his price. Harry Kane has been very consistent with returns in every single game since Game Week 2. The only time he blanked was in Game Week 1 against Southampton, and that's when I had them, to be fair. But 6 goals and 2 assists in 7 matches, with some good underlying numbers such as the XG, the expected assists, and even when you look at expected goal involvement, only the likes of Haaland are higher. And he's actually 11.4 million, Harry Kane, which is very surprising, but it also is kind of obvious, or it makes sense with everyone making that switch in Game Week 2 to Erling Haaland, who has been on another level this season. Harry Kane's ownership is actually 19.1%, so he's a nice differential. If you are looking for 2 premium forwards, then you have to go for Harry Kane and Haaland. There is no debate about that. I wouldn't go for Aubameyang, Cristiano Ronaldo or anyone else, and I do think it's worth going for the extra millions for Harry Kane. It's just a matter of which structure you really want and prefer, because some of you, like myself, may want to go for 1 premium midfielder and then possibly switch to Mohamed Salah in matchday 12, or you could also have the likes of Heung-min Son and Kevin De Bruyne to also alternate to. In the forward line, it's just Harry Kane and Erling Haaland, who everyone has anyway. But Harry Kane has some kind of mixed fixtures. He has a great record against Arsenal, to be fair, and I could see some returns there. The same goes for Brighton under their new manager De Zerbi, and Everton have been actually quite resolute defensively. So although it's marked as a quite easy fixture on the FDR, I don't think it might be that straightforward in terms of the ceiling. You know, even if I expect Spurs to beat Everton, maybe there won't be a bloodshed, although that has happened in the last few seasons as well. Harry Kane for me is a fantastic option with the underlying numbers. His overall performances haven't been that great, but he's still getting those goals and assists and a much better start to this season compared to the last. If anything, it's Heung-min Son who has trailed behind. I think Harry Kane is the go-to forward if you're looking for 2 premium strikers. Heung-min Son is a reluctant buy. I like his ownership. He's only 10.6% owned. He's at 11.7 million, which normally for Heung-min Son is an absolute bargain, but he scored a hat-trick against the worst team in the league coming off the bench, but will that happen every single time? He also got a 19-pointer last season against Leicester, and they're the worst team in the league right now. He's not going to play them every single week, as we discussed with Harry Kane. Some pretty tough fixtures on the horizon, and Heung-min Son, what I like about him is that he poses a nice differential captaincy option potentially in game weeks such as Game Week 11 against Everton, and even against Man United in Game Week 12, although I would prefer the likes of Mohamed Salah, where you could also easily go from Heung-min Son or De Bruyne to the Egyptian. The underlying numbers aren't that great, but to be fair, they weren't that great in the last season when Heung-min Son was actually one of the best players in the entire game. And Heung-min Son has the most points of any Premier League player in 2022, but he had a very slow start to this season, and obviously most of his attacking returns came against Leicester. But Heung-min Son for me is worth buying, especially on a wild card, a nice placeholder for Salah potentially in Game Week 12. And you've also got Kevin De Bruyne, who I do prefer over Son, but you also have to think about the Game Week 12 blank between Man City and Arsenal, and most of us, if not all, will be going for the likes of Haaland and Cancelo. And if you also want someone like Martinelli or another Arsenal player, you know, you have to be very careful in terms of having too many of these City and Arsenal players combined, because it will be very difficult to navigate Game Week 12, and you have to use your transfers in the next few weeks exclusively in terms of finding non-City and Arsenal players to field an entire 11 in Game Week 12. You don't want to be using your free hit in that game week. But Heung-min Son is a nice solution to that problem. You can go for him instead of Kevin De Bruyne, and that's why he's in my current wildcard draft. Be sure to check out my team selection video that I uploaded recently. But Heung-min Son is a buy, although I still would have some concerns about him in the long term. A lot of people want to sell Martinelli, and I completely understand that. The fixtures are pretty poor with the exception of Leeds in game week 11, and although the fixtures from game weeks 13 to 17 are really good, you also want to have the likes of Cancelo and Haaland, as we discussed, and it makes it very difficult to also have Martinelli. But the reasons why I would consider holding him is because I think he could actually be one of the best Arsenal options in those games against Tottenham and Liverpool. His ceiling won't be that high potentially, but he's a really cheap midfielder. He's 6.5 million. A lot of us will have a lot of value tied up in him, and when you look at his price and below, I don't really see anyone being on the same level. You do have Pascal Gross, who has been actually even better in terms of FPL points so far, but I don't expect that to continue. He's got some poor fixtures himself, and Martinelli plays for one of the best teams in the league at this moment in time. He's got some good underlying numbers. Smith Rowe is injured, so Martinelli will be fairly nailed on even during the really busy October period. Let's see how Smith Rowe recovers from the injury, which hopefully is very soon. And Martinelli is very easy to bench in game week 12 when Arsenal play Man City. So if you do go for a wildcard team, you could go for Haaland, Cancelo and Martinelli and bench all of them by the time Game Week 12 comes to the horizon, and then you can have a full 11 anyway, as we discussed in the best wildcard team video and the team selection. So bear that in mind. I think he's really easy to bench. He's cheap. He's the best option at his price and below, and he's got some great long-term fixtures. So if you have the structure and you're able to bench him in Game Week 12, I would actually keep him because I don't like the alternatives. Pascal Gross, not as much. You also have a few others like Billing potentially to think about, but I just wouldn't put him in the same level as Martinelli. And then you've got a few others like Trossard, Rashford, Sinistera, another Leeds midfielder like Harrison, but I think Martinelli is the best of the lot, so I would keep him despite the fixtures. Salah has gone down to 12.9 million, and he's the second most transferred out player with over 150,000 transfers out, which is insane. And what I like even more about Salah at the moment is his ownership, 35.4%. He's not in my current wildcard squad, but he's someone I'm looking to target around game week 12 onwards, and Liverpool have some really good fixtures. Over the next three, I don't like them so much, Brighton, Arsenal, Man City, but I still wouldn't be too surprised if Salah got some returns. If you've kept Salah up until now, I just don't see the need to sell him. We don't know what Brighton we're going to get really with the new manager, although I don't expect a huge change in terms of personnel and playing style. It might take some time for things to really gel there in that club. So I think Salah's a great option. And not only that, we look at the performance against Ajax, and Salah scored in that game, and he looked much more dangerous with the return of Thiago. He's got some decent underlying numbers, obviously nowhere near what Salah's fully capable of, but 24 key passes makes him one of the best creators in the league right now. And if he can get into those central positions, which he hasn't been doing so much in this calendar year, I think he will definitely get those goals back. Not to the same level as the first half of the last campaign. I don't think we're going to see that again, but Salah is still a great option, and I don't really see the need to chop and change these premium midfielders, jumping from Salah to Son, then to De Bruyne, and then back to Salah. Although there is some merit to that, and you can play the fixtures that way if you wish, I don't really recommend that. I would rather stick to a premium for the long term. So if you are on a wild card potentially, that's where I would go for someone like Son or De Bruyne instead, and then maybe bring Salah in a few game weeks time, around game week 12 for example. But for normal free transfer, if you have Salah at this moment in time, I wouldn't be looking to sell. I know the Arsenal Man City fixtures are enough to put anyone off, but I still think he's capable in those games, even against Man City, where he tends to get the better of Cancelo in that duel. So Salah for me is a hold, and I think he can get back to his best very soon. It's the year of the forwards. Tony is the third highest scoring player in the game with 47 points, and the top two are Haaland and Kane. So it's just absolutely exceptional. And Tony is one of the most transferred out players in this game week, with almost 50,000 FPL managers taking him out after his blank against Arsenal, where he was completely anonymous. But you also have to think about the system, the context, and the team they're up against. Arsenal have actually been really good away from home. Apart from United, where they obviously lost that game, they've kept clean sheets in all the other matches, and they're top of the league right now. And Tony actually suffers when Brentford switch to a back three formation. He plays really well when they play a back four, and more importantly, when he's the lone striker and he doesn't play up top with Mbeumo. So you have to take these factors into account. He's got some good long-term fixtures, starting with Bournemouth up next. His ownership is 20.4% and he's 7.2 million. And Isak is actually injured currently, but even without that injury doubt, which to be honest could just be to save him from the international break, I still prefer Tony. I think he's a much better FPL option. I think he's going to get more goals and more more goal contributions, and you also have to think about Callum Wilson coming back into the Newcastle team. So as much as Isak is a good choice, I think Toney's even better. He's got an impeccable penalty record. He's also good from open play. He's got 5 goals and 2 assists with some great underlying numbers, and he's got 7 big chances with 11 key passes. I think it's just too many good reasons why you should hold Ivan Toney, and if you don't have him, I would actually consider buying him. Although Mitrovic, Kane and Haaland look better on paper, I think Toney is the next best option from the lot. Despite being the most transferred out player this week, Jesus still has an ownership of 72%, which is only bettered by Erling Haaland. He obviously holds the record of all time, having his ownership reach, I think, around 83% or something ridiculous like that in Game Week 1 or 2. So Jesus is a very popular option, and with good reason. He's got 7 goal contributions in 7 games. He's had a fantastic start to life at Arsenal, and he's got some good underlying numbers, and I would argue he should have scored even more goals. But why would I talk about selling him? Well, this is something I discussed in the weeks prior, and there's a few reasons, and there's another one that's been added following the Brentford game, and that is he's 1 yellow card away from suspension, so he could easily miss one of these next few games, and he has the blank already in Game Week 12. That's already a big reason why I think you should sell Gabriel Jesus. And another one is the alternative. You've got the likes of Toney, Isak even if you want to go there, and Mitrovic, who are cheaper and who are going to be talismanic. They're on penalties, and they probably offer better value than even Gabriel Jesus is one of the best value forwards in the game. So I would go in that direction. And not only that, all of those options that I just mentioned have better fixtures. So I think there's plenty of reasons why you should go somewhere else. And despite Gabriel Jesus being really good in the big games, he's only scored once against Tottenham in 9 appearances. And then he's facing Liverpool, who, to be fair, I could see Jesus getting some joy there potentially. But Liverpool are looking better already, at least in that one appearance where Thiago returned against Ajax. And Leeds is looking really good. That's the one fixture I would look at and be quite concerned about as a non-Jesus owner. But Jesus is also a bit of an awkward one in terms of benching in Game Week 12 if you decide to keep him. So I personally would sell Jesus. There's too many reasons why. And another thing that I have to say, another real big reason why I think you should sell him is because you can actually deviate away from the template, because he's still going to be owned by over 50% of the game by the Game Week 9 deadline. And if you're on a wildcard especially, it's a really good time to go away from that to a lower owned player who's got better fixtures, a better chance of returns, and who will also probably do an even better job, I think, over the next month or so until the World Cup. Why would I talk about keeping Salah and selling Diaz? A lot of people are actually thinking about the opposite and going from Salah to Diaz, who has actually scored a similar amount of points this season so far, and you save the extra millions. But I actually prefer Salah. In the long term, I think he's going to come good, and he's the better FPL option by far, and he justifies those extra millions. And with Diaz, you have so many alternatives around the same price, such as Madison. There is Bowen as well, although I'm not too keen on him, as I discussed recently. And you also have the likes of Bukayo Saka, who's looked really good, Phil Foden, and obviously they both blank in Game Week 12, so that's completely fine. You also have Wilfried Zaha around 7.2 million, who's on penalties, and he's got some great fixtures up until the World Cup. So I would actually sell Luis Diaz. I don't see too many returns over the next few games, although the fixtures from Game Week 12 onwards do clear up. And if you're really insistent on keeping Diaz, that's fair enough, but I wouldn't be looking to buy him in right now. His underlying numbers are okay. They're nothing special, to be honest, and he does offer decent value, but I think there is actually much better FPL options in the midfield. And I actually talked about buying him after the Bournemouth game, but once again, my initial instinct from pre-season, and I talked about this, is that I don't think he gets enough attacking returns. I know he's been arguably Liverpool's best forward this season so far, but I expect that to change. I think Salah will come really good and be the focal point of that Liverpool attack, and I don't really see a space for Luis Diaz in our FPL teams. This season is unlike any other. The forwards are conquering, and there's also a lot of talk about selling and buying goalkeepers in these transfer tips videos, and Dean Henderson for me is the next one to sell and the last sell of this video. And the reason why I say this is because he's 4.7 million and Nottingham Forest are awful defensively. They're averaging 2 or 3 goals conceded per game. They've conceded 119 shots overall, and they've conceded 17 goals in 7 matches, and I don't really trust them. Despite Dean Henderson being a great penalty stopper, he's also good with saves in general and bonus points when Nottingham Forest do keep a clean sheet. Those are few and far between. You've got Nick Pope at only 0.5 million more, and you've got Gaeta at an even cheaper price, and I believe Crystal Palace will keep many more clean sheets than Nottingham Forest. So I think it's a very easy sell for Dean Henderson, who, to be fair, his ownership isn't that high. It's only 13.6%, but I just don't really see a need to go for him. If anything, go for Nico Williams as your really cheap defender and have him on the bench, but I wouldn't go anywhere near that Nottingham Forest team, especially defensively right now. This may be a very controversial one, but I will explain. Saliba is the most transferred in player this week with over 170,000 transfers in after his masterclass against Brentford, but he's facing Tottenham and Liverpool next, and Arsenal haven't kept a clean sheet at home so far this season, and all of their clean sheets have come in the away matches against the likes of Crystal Palace, Bournemouth and Brentford. So keep that in mind. And as much as Saliba has attacking threat, which I talked about even before he scored against Bournemouth, you know, he's got that aerial presence and he's really good. He looks threatening even from game week 1. I still wouldn't go for him right now. If you have him and you have value tied up in him, great. I would keep him and no issues with that whatsoever. I think the tricky part comes with a wild card, because I still would probably look elsewhere and then bring Saliba back in, but it's a bit tricky because I think in the long term, looking until the end of the season potentially, and especially from game weeks 13 to 17, I think Saliba is one of the best defenders to own. But right now, I wouldn't look to buy him. Even if you're looking for a new defender, I just don't really see too many clean sheets, if any at all, over the next 3. And you also have the blank in game week 12. Saliba has some decent underlying numbers, especially for a defender, and Arsenal have been one of the best defenses and teams so far this season. But I would skip Saliba and maybe look to buy him from game week 13 onwards. This was a rather surprising one. McAllister is in the top 10 most transferred in players this week with over 100,000 transfers in, and he's also been fantastic this season so far with 39 points. But the majority of his returns have come from penalties. Brighton have a new manager, and they also have some really poor fixtures such as Liverpool, Tottenham and Man City over the next 5. So I don't really see a need or a space for these Brighton midfielders right now. I had Gross in my team and I thought he's been a fabulous option so far this season. And the same goes for McAllister, who has some very good underlying numbers for a 5.6 million midfielder who has 6.6% ownership. But I just don't see a need to go for him right now. And if anything, once the fixtures dry up and they start looking better, you can bring these players in after we've also seen how Brighton do under the Serbi. But at this moment in time, I wouldn't go anywhere near Brighton assets, and that is especially relevant to the likes of McAllister. I would rather go for Gross and Trossard, who I think have more sustainable returns in the long term. Let me know what you think of this one, but I personally would skip McAllister. I've been asked a lot about Paquette in the last few weeks since his arrival to West Ham, and he's 1.3% owned, he's 6 million, and West Ham have some of the best fixtures over the next 6 or 7 games. But West Ham themselves haven't been scoring enough goals. They're in the relegation zone right now, and I would still spend the extra millions on Jarrod Bowen. Lucas Paquette has only started 2 games, and his underlying numbers are nothing special, only 2 shots overall, both of them in the box at least, but still, there's nothing here that's worth highlighting in terms of a statistical perspective or even his performances and the positions he occupies for me to genuinely recommend him as an FPL option. And for a similar price, you can go for Rashford or Martinelli, Pascal Gross even, who, to be fair, despite my reservations about Brighton, I still think Gross is a better option than Paquette. So I personally would skip him for the time being. And once he shows some signs, whether it's in terms of the underlying numbers, in terms of actual performances and goals, until then, I would skip him, and if anything, go for Jarrod Bowen, but I'm still reluctant about that as well. And if anything, I'm looking at the likes of Soufal or Emerson Palmieri, but in particular Soufal in terms of West Ham coverage. So that's it. We've covered 12 players today to buy, hold, sell and skip. Let me know if you disagree with any of these, and if there are any other players that are really popular this week or even under the radar that maybe I've missed and that you want to add to one of these lists. I'd very much appreciate if you comment that in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video or found it useful, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes and as many likes as possible, and let's get to 15,000 subscribers. We're very close to that milestone, so let's keep on pushing. And thank you for all your support, and to all the channel members and patrons, we've got an incredible number at this moment in time, so thank you very much for all your support. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and also check the links in the description below, including the Patreon, the channel memberships, the FPL League and the Discord server. All of that is there. So I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 9, and I hope you enjoy the international break, and I'll see you next time.